Hi, this is Hailey from We Learn to Share, and in this video I'll be walking you through the literature passage in the SAT reading section. If you haven't already watched my first video, I've already posted one walking you through the history section of the same paper. It'll be sort of a series of me solving different sections in the SAT reading test, so please stay tuned. And if you haven't already watched the video, we started solving the practice test 7 that's available to you free on the College Board official website. So if you haven't started with us in that video, please download the same paper so that you can keep this video on while you're solving it, or you can solve it by yourself and then watch this video for clarification. It's frankly all up to you, but I hope that this video will give you some guidance on how to solve these kind of questions and how to fully assert that you get a good score in your SAT reading. So just getting straight to the point, the passage that we're going to be looking at is adapted from George Eliot, Silas Marner. So you can see here, as I already mentioned in the history section solve through, this part of the passage is very important. If you're one of those people who tend to skip through this part and just go straight to the passage, I don't recommend doing that. Also, another thing that I don't recommend doing is not reading the passage first and going straight to the questions. I see a lot of people who do that, but I strongly recommend, even if it takes a little time, that you thoroughly read the passage first, because it really helps you. And if you do it like the former way, then you'll eventually have to go back again. It'll just take more time than you anticipated. So that's my advice to you. And we're not going to read it together. You can do that in your own time. So we're just going to go straight to the questions. So number 1, which choice best describes the major theme of the passage? A, the corrupting influence of a materialistic society. B, the moral purity of young children. C, the bittersweet brevity of childhood naivety. And D, the restorative power of parental love. So these all seem like very valid choices, but you need to fully kind of dissect the passage to find out, especially for these number 1 questions in the literature passage. They tend to ask about the broad overall picture or major theme of the passage itself, so we need to look carefully for this one. If you look through the passage, you'll be able to see that basically it's a story of how this, I'm not exactly sure of the whole book because I haven't read it, but just looking at this passage, it seems like this person who was obsessed with money and gold adopted or found some child that he or she needed to take care of. Her name was Epi, and Epi, as the protagonist, took care of this child. He could find changes in himself. He could find that his materialistic value started to disappear, and he started to find newfound love for life. That's basically the whole story of this passage. And if you can see here, I think just how I briefly explained the whole passage, I'm thinking that it's not A, because it's not about the influence of a society. It hasn't even mentioned a society. It just mentioned briefly about how materialistic this protagonist Silas was before he met Epi. So I don't think A is the main theme of the passage overall. B, the moral purity of young children, we're going to keep that because it does talk awfully a lot about how Epi was very pure and how his, or her, I'm not really sure at this point, but how Epi's purity kind of changed Silas for the better, so we're going to keep that. And C, the bittersweet brevity of childhood naivety. This part, I'm going to say I agree with. It does kind of have lots of implications of childhood and purity, as B also states. But the bittersweet brevity, if it talked about how Epi grew up and how Silas was, I guess, nostalgic of the times where Epi was pure and was full of childhoodness, I'm not even sure if that's a word, but then this would suffice. But I'm not sure that brevity is the key theme that we're looking for here, so we're gonna disregard that one. And D, the restorative power of parental love. Now this is kind of interesting because, as I said, as Silas took care of Epi, he found this newfound love for life. He could find that his materialistic values, or kind of his traits that he thought were not as good or beneficial to him, it kind of disappeared. So I would say that that's restorative, and I would say that that's parental love, so we're going to keep that as well. So it's down to B and D. The moral purity of young children, we're going to see in the passage. We could see a lot of allusions to childhood here, and just joy, and in the interaction with Silas as well. But I'm not sure if like the moral purity itself is the key concept here, because it's sort of as you know, with all literature, there needs to be some sort of argument or a key statement that the author is getting across, and it's also the case in SAT passages, literature passages. So the moral purity of young children is kind of the two-dimensional theme, should I say, in this way. And D is sort of the parental love. It's kind of an implication that the moral purity itself is kind of embedded into that word of parental love. So B is kind of like the causation, and D is the effect, I guess. So D has a more deeper meaning that dissects into the passage more thoroughly, so we're going to go with D here. B would be a good choice, but I'm not sure that B would be the best choice when D is already there as a better choice and in the same question. So I hope that makes sense. So for number 1, I'm going to put D. And for number 2, oh, and I almost forgot, for this passage as well, if you watched my history passage video, then you know that this is a technique that I often use. When you get your test for the first time, I would recommend that you find the questions that are linked together, like here, 5 and 6. See? It says previous question, so it's kind of linked to the previous question, linked to question 5. So we're going to put like a symbol on these 2 questions so that we don't waste our times, because if we look at 5 and try to answer it and then go to 6 and see that there were already examples, then it would be kind of a waste of our time, and we don't have much of that in the exams, so it would be a good strategy to use. Also here, 8 and 9, we're gonna put a triangle there as well. Anyways, going on to the second question. As compared with Silas's gold, Epi is portrayed as having more A, vitality, B, durability, C, protection, and D, self-sufficiency. Now, the meaning of these words you should know. This is why your vocabulary is really important when doing SAT English. Vitality, durability. I think just from the get-go, A is a very good choice, vitality, so we're definitely going to keep that. Durability, I'm not sure is a good word to use on a human. Not only a human, it doesn't really fit the context of this passage overall, so we're not going to use durability. And C, protection. Well, Epi has more protection. That doesn't make sense, first of all, and I think you'll know that. You'll just see that protection is not a good word, both grammatically and also contextually, because she is not exactly portrayed as having more protection. She's just more portrayed as a pure childlike figure, so we're going to disregard C as well. D, self-sufficiency. Again, she's not some oil or gas that we're using for environmental self-sufficiency. This is not a good word to use on a human. And again, she's a child that needs to be taken care of. Self-sufficiency is not the good word to use on in this sort of context, so we're going to disregard that as well. Vitality, if we look back in the passage, there's lots of connotations of vitality when in describing Epi. I'm just going to look at it just off the top of my head. Like joy, it's also a sign of vitality, and here there's lots of environmental or nature references when talking about Epi as well. So that's also a sign of vitality, and his mind is growing into memory as a child's mind is growing into knowledge, growing again. And I'm sure there's a better example here. Let's see. Yeah, I think overall it's just hinting very strongly that Epi is a symbol of vitality for Silas. So we're gonna go with A. I'm sorry for rushing things. If you look at this and still don't get it, I advise you to thoroughly read the passage again, because you will find more examples that I'm not capable of finding at the moment. So, because we have the video has time limit, so For number 3, which statement best describes the technique the narrator uses to represent Silas's character before he adopted Epi? Now here we're going to look at the choices. A, the narrator emphasizes Silas's former obsession with wealth by depicting his gold as requiring certain behaviors on his part. B, the narrator underscores Silas's former greed by describing his gold as seeming to reproduce on its own. C, the narrator hints at Silas's former antisocial attitude by contrasting his present behavior towards his neighbors with his past behavior towards them. D, the narrator demonstrates Silas's former lack of self-awareness by implying that he is unable to recall life before Epi. Now, looking at these choices, let's look at A first. The narrator emphasizes Silas's former obsession with wealth by depicting his gold as requiring certain behaviors on his part. If you see here, when he talks about the gold has kept his thoughts in an ever-repeated circle, leading to nothing beyond itself. And it talks about Epi, it's a sort of juxtaposition, juxtaposing, putting two figures close together when they actually have different connotations. So here the gold has kind of negative and materialistic values that bring values of Silas that are brought about, and Epi brings about very caring and altruistic parts of Silas. So these two are juxtaposed. Anyways, here he says that the gold needs nothing and must be worshipped in close locked solitude. The word worship is a very significant word here because it's very strong. It has very strong connotations. And here it says, worship kind of is aligned with the word obsession. I've made it, here. It's kind of very aligned with the word obsession and requiring certain behaviors, requiring worship. It's in the same lines, so it's a strong choice, A. And B, underscores Silas's former greed by describing his gold as seeming to reproduce on its own. Well, although that might be true, I can't even find where it says that. The gold, does it even say that it seems like it's reproducing? Maybe, but that doesn't matter because whether it did it or not, the fact that the gold reproduces doesn't really align with Silas's greed. It could be a metaphor that says there was a lot of gold, because seeming to reproduce, it means that it seems like it's never ending, but it doesn't exactly hint at Silas's greed. So B is not a good choice. And C, the narrator hints at Silas's former antisocial attitude, contrasting his present behavior towards his neighbors with his past behavior towards them. I don't think it talks a lot about how he treated the neighbors. I don't think it really talks about how he treated his neighbors, both before Epi and after Epi. So this isn't a good choice because, first of all, it's insignificant, and second of all, I can't even find where it is, so that just proves that it's insignificant. And it doesn't really prove that he was antisocial, And D, the narrator demonstrates Silas's former act of lack of self-awareness by implying that he's unable to recall life before Epi. Now we know that it's not true because just here it says that his mind was growing into memory, and it's not that he can't recall it. He can recall how materialistic and how self-centered he was before Epi, and he can see that these changes are happening, and he can contrast these changes from what the person he was before and the person he is now. So it's not a very good choice to say that he is unable to recall life. So that leaves us with A, because we can find clear-cut evidence here in the passage. I think in reading, the most important thing in all questions is finding the ample amount of clear-cut evidence that can justify your answer in the questions. Number 4, the narrator uses the phrase making trial of everything in line 7 to present Epi as. So we're going to go to line 7. Living sounds and living movements, making trial of everything with trust and new joy, and stirring the human kindness in all eyes that look on her. Now this is a matter of connotations and kind of implications, just looking at the nuance of the sentence itself, making trial of everything. Now trial, we know that in scientific experiments, trial means like the word trial and error, for example. Trial means just trying new things over and over again, and it says that making trial of everything, basically trying everything. So it can say not exactly friendly, because trying everything and friendly doesn't exactly mix. Curious, yes, because trying everything just basically means that Epi was eager to do anything or try anything to find out new things in life. Curious is definitely a good choice. And disobedient, it has too strong of a negative connotation. Here it's not saying that making trial everything so that and then causing mischief. It's just saying that she was making trial everything. It's the sentence itself is trying to emphasize how I hate to say this bluntly, but curious, and how I guess there's no better word to explain it. I guess it's trying to emphasize the childishness and childish curiosity that Epi has in the world. So this is much too negative of a word. And D, judgmental, again, it's too negative, and it's not even true, because judgmental is kind of being sort of condescending and evaluating everything so that to find out its flaws and everything, and it's not a very good choice. So we're going to choose B. And number 5, because we marked it with the triangle, we're going to look at 6 first. The previous question is that, according to the narrator, one consequence of Silas adopting Epi is that he, and we're going to look at all these choices to see which one shows consequence of Silas adopting Epi. So A, 9 to 11, the gold itself. Here, the gold has kept his thoughts in an ever-repeated circle leading to nothing beyond itself. This is not a consequence. This is a sort of reminiscence to the man he was, or the man Silas was before Epi. So this is not a good choice. It doesn't exactly show the consequence. And lines 11 to 16, but Epi to years. But Epi was an object compacted of changes and hopes that forced his thoughts onward and carried them far away from their old eager pacing towards the same bank limit, carried them away to the new things that would come with the coming years. Well, we could say that this is a good choice, because Epi was an object compacted of changes, hopes, and this is a consequence here, forced his thoughts onward and carried them far away from their old eager pacing. See, this is basically the cause and effect. So this is a very good choice for a consequence. So we're definitely going to keep that. Oh, sorry. I don't know why this does this sometimes. We're definitely going to keep B. And C, 41 to 43, then to stillness. Then she would turn her ears to some sudden burn note. Silas learned to please her. Already here, this is not a consequence, this is just an interaction, and we can't say that it's directly linked to anything that happened after Silas adopted Epi, so this is not a good choice. And lines 61 to 63, shapes to 4. Here. Shapes and sounds grew clear for Epi's eyes and ears, and more that data was imperatively required to know what's no account for. Again, this is not a consequence. There's no clear consequence of adopting Epi, and the effect on Silas itself is just talking about Epi, so this is not a good choice. So B is definitely a good choice. So B is basically saying that, just to briefly account for it, Epi was an object, forced his thoughts onward. Forced his thoughts onward. It's basically saying that it made him imagine the future and carried them far away from the blank limit, carried them away from the new things that come with coming years. So he's basically looking forward to his coming years. He's looking forward to his future, which was once blank and once very bland, and he didn't really find any meaning of looking forward to it. So that's the consequence of adopting Epi. A, has renounced all desire for money. That's clearly not what I just said. B, better understands his place in nature. Nature, I'm not so sure about that. C, seems more accepting of help from others. There's no nothing that implied that he was more accepting of help, so we're going to disregard that. D, looks forward to a different kind of future. Right here, it's exactly what I just briefly explained in the choice that we made in 6. So D is clearly the answer. And we're going to look at 7. What function does the second paragraph, lines 30 to 52, serve in the passage as a whole? Yeah, we're not going to read the whole answers. You can do that in your own time. But we're going to look at the second paragraph, 30 to 52. This is a long paragraph, so we're not going to read all of it. But basically, to briefly tell you what it's about, it's just basically talking about an interaction between Silas and Epi in the meadows and sunny midday shadows. So basically it's talking about a very bright, sunny day where Silas and Epi are enjoying a good day out. And yeah, it just shows how Silas is trying hard to please her. Epi is calling him dad, and it's just a very pleasant and wholesome scene overall. They're just, yeah, Silas is looking for herbs for her. It's a very wholesome scene. So this scene, does it represent the particular moment at which Silas realized that Epi was changing him? I'm not really sure about that because it's not exactly the exact moment that Silas realized it. It's just an interaction. So this is too far-fetched. B, it highlights Silas' love for Epi that by depicting the sacrifices that he makes for her. Well, this part I guess it makes sense, but the sacrifices I'm not sure. It's just a mutually wholesome interaction between the two. I'm not sure that sacrifices is a sufficient word for here. C, it illustrates the effect that Epi has on Silas by describing the interaction between them. I've been saying this word too much, but interaction certainly, yes. And it illustrates the effect that Epi has on Silas. Let's see. Effect. Yeah, see, Silas is carrying Epi around. She would turn her ear to some sudden burn. Silas learned to please her, making signs of hushed stillness. Silas began to look for the once familiar herbs again. He's doing so much for Epi, and this is clearly the effect that Epi has on Silas. As you can see, he's looking for a new future. He found a new engagement and new love for life, and this is clearly seen in the way he interacts with Epi in this scene. So, in this paragraph, sorry. So we're gonna put C as the answer. For now, we're gonna look at D first, and D reveals a significant alteration in the relationship between Silas and Epi. I'm not sure because alteration, it seems pretty consistent to me. The mutually beneficial, wholesome, loving relationship. It seems pretty sustained overall in the passage, so we're not going to go with that. So C is the answer that we're going to go for. 8 and 9, again, they are connected, so we're going to look at 8 first. In describing the relationship between Epi and Silas, the narrator draws a connection between Epi's, and we're going to look at 9 for the examples. So we're going to look at how the author describes the relationship between Epi and Silas. So lines 1 to 9, unlike to her. Unlike the goal which needed nothing and must be worshipped in close solitude, which is hidden away from daylight, Epi was a creature with endless claims and ever-growing desires, sunshine, living sounds, living movements. Okay, wait. Yeah, it's until 9, sorry. All eyes I looked on her. So that's a long line, but anyways. It draws a contrast between gold and Epi, but we're gonna see in 8 if there's a sufficient choice for it. So yeah, it doesn't show much any choice that says that Epi and Silas's gold there's a connection drawn between the two, so unfortunately A will not be the answer. B, 30 to 41, and when to flowers. And when the sunshine grew strong and lasting, so the buttercups were thick in the meadows, flowers grew. Pluck the flowers, I guess this is a very, oh sorry, here. Bringing him the flowers, sorry. Again, this is a very long segment of the passage. And here I'm not seeing much of a contrast in itself, so immediately we can see that B is not a good answer. C, sitting to again. Sitting on the banks in this way, Silas began to look for the once familiar herbs again. Well, it's short, which probably means that, for one, there's not much in it, so there's not much meaning that we can draw from it. And just looking at the line itself, there's no sign of any contrast in any way, so we're not going to use that. And 53 to 57 adds the to consciousness. As a child's mind was growing into knowledge, his mind was growing into memory. As her life unfolded, his soul, long stupefied in a cold, narrow prison, was unfolding too, and trembling gradually into full consciousness. Here we can see sort of contrast between the child growing, and Silas's mind growing. See, the use of growing in two different subjects kind of shows a contrast, so we're definitely going to keep that. We're going to look at 8 if there's a sufficient choice for that. Physical vulnerability and Silas's emotional fragility, I don't think so. That's too negative for 1, and it doesn't show much about Silas's emotional fragility. And B, expanding awareness and Silas's increasing engagement with life, sure. Awareness kind of is aligned with knowledge, as well as increasing engagement with life shows how his mind is growing and what does life unfold. His soul is unfolding into full consciousness, so basically his engagement with life can certainly be said that to be increasing. So definitely we're going to keep this one. Boundless energy and Silas's insatiable desire for wealth. Well, it doesn't exactly talk about wealth, it talks about how he changed from this insatiable desire from person with insatiable desire for wealth. So this isn't going to be a good choice again. And D, physical growth and Silas's painful perception of his own mortality. Physical growth, sure, it does talk about physical growth here, but painful mortality, his soul, like here you can mistake this as the negative connotation, but here it says this negative prison of his soul was unfolding into full consciousness. So basically, all in all, it's been changing into a positive effect. So this painful perception of his own mortality is too negative, so this is not the answer. So gradually we're going to go with B. And for 9, we're going to go with D. For 10, it's a very short question, as used in 65. Fine mostly nearly meets 65. She developed a fine capacity for mischief. We're going to disregard this for a moment. She developed, it's not capacity, sorry. She developed a blank capacity for mischief. So we're just going to put it here, capacity. Fine capacity for A, we're going to put each of them inside the blank. Acceptable capacity for mischief. Yeah, sure, but it's not the best choice. For capacity to be acceptable, it just doesn't make much sense, so we're not going to choose this one. B, delicate capacity for mischief. Well, it sort of draws a contrast, the word mischief and delicate. Mischief, there can be delicate mischief, but I don't think it's talking about the rowdy, childish mischief. So delicate, I don't think is a very good word to use here. Ornate just means, like in the word ornament, just means decorated. But decorated capacity for mischief, that doesn't make sense at all. Keen capacity for mischief, it just seems like the best choice overall, because you could say that this child who loves mischief had a keen capacity for mischief to provoke it a lot and just enjoy provoking it a lot. So D overall is the best choice. So that concludes this passage. I'm not sure if I did a very good job in explaining. I tried my best, but still, if you have any questions on this passage overall, please leave comments below, and I'll try my best to get back to you as soon as I can. So I was thinking, this is just a sort of a TMI from me to you. I was thinking of resuming the IGCSE history videos, just conversely, so history, SAT, SAT like that, but I'm thinking because in December the SATs will end for all of you, and after that it's going to be online, and it's going to be harder for me to make content on the online SATs when I haven't even taken them. So I'm thinking I'm just going to get all the SAT videos over with, and then I'm just going to keep on uploading history videos from that moment on. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video as well. Please leave comments on any feedback or any questions that you have. And yeah, I hope to see you in my next lecture as well. Thank you for watching.